Hello, I'm Jim Blankenship, Chair of the SCAI Advocacy and Government Relations Committee.
Hi, I'm Peter Duffy. I'm co-chair of the Advocacy Committee for SCAI and also a member of the Board of Trustees of SCAI. So Jim, we've been doing advocacy for quite some time now and it's been very exciting in the past year. What do you think are our major accomplishments now for the past year from the Advocacy Committee?
It's been a very active year for the SCAI Advocacy Committee, and one of the biggest strengths has been that we have increased the number of committee members, and your addition several years ago and that of Tony Farrett to the committee has been enormously beneficial. We have a much larger committee now, composed of active members who are interested in pushing SCAI's agenda forward on many different levels.
So what do you think have been some of the major accomplishments over the past year?
I think the biggest accomplishment has been the successful formation of the Political Action Committee. That was started about a year ago, and already we have seen contributions that exceed those of some other organizations of our same size, and already we have seen an influence. Interestingly, it's not just where we have donated money, but it's the mere fact that we have a PAC and that we have these funds that is making some legislators come to us for our opinion on various different legislative issues. So it has given us access to legislators and to the ability to provide opinions on some of the legislation on the Hill that as recently as a year and a half ago we did not have.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out to our members too that other subspecialties do have PACs, but we're the only one really representing interventional cardiologists there on the Hill, and that's important because interventional radiology has been there for quite some time and been very effective in their lobbying efforts, and we certainly want to be able to be right there with them on the Hill, staking out our position and pointing out to leaders in Congress and leaders on the Senate staffs why we're important to the healthcare system. We've been working very hard in several other fields there. So one of the things that we've worked hard on is getting a specialty designation through Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services for interventional cardiology. And that will allow us in one big way to consult with our colleagues and actually get paid for the consults we do right now from members of our own groups that refer us patients. That's not the case right now because we're all considered just general cardiologists. So we'll be designated separately. We'll also be looked at separately in terms of our coding. Our coding is important. We generally do take more time for an evaluation and management code just when we see a new patient than a general cardiologist does. So we're considered in some ways outliers because we're grouped with them. And this will allow us to distinguish ourselves from our general cardiology colleagues in a very positive way.
One other point that has been an important focus for the Advocacy Committee has been the evaluation of interventional cardiology procedures. For a long time, the coronary intervention procedures have been on the
chopping block.
They've been on the chopping block and have been targeted by CMS as potentially overvalued and overused. And they finally got around to making us revalue those procedures, and that was done by a survey that interventional cardiologists filled out. The results of the survey confirmed what we suspected, that interventional procedures take less time now than they did when they were first valued 20 years ago. Based on the results of the survey, we were at risk for losing fully half of the value, half of the RVUs that we currently get for coronary interventions. But fortunately, through the efforts of the committee, we were able to convince CMS that the intensity of the procedure is actually increased by 50 to 80%, so that in fact the drop in RVU values was on the range of 20%, but certainly much less than the 50% that we were at risk for losing when they did the revaluation.
Yeah, and I think our leaders from SCAI have been integral in that process there, and it's important for our members to recognize, which I didn't know at the time, that we were being paid for even the past several years on basically bailout stenting, where it was considered a failed balloon angioplasty, and we'd have a perfusion balloon up for sometimes up to an hour and be in the lab with the patient for an hour to 2 hours, and then put the bailout stent in at that point, and that was the stenting code. So now that we do much less time-consuming procedures, not necessarily less difficult procedures, but less time-consuming procedures, that was factored into the equation and why that difference and change was made there. So one other area we really focused on too was looking at ER call for interventional cardiologists who respond for STEMIs. And that's been an important issue over the years to many of our members, and we thought a very critical one for us to address there. Because you're taking time out of your day, oftentimes having to leave your office, to be able to go and care for patients in the emergency room and take them to the cath lab, which you want to do, but you're still responsible for covering your office overhead, rearranging your office, or sometimes if you do 2 STEMIs in a night, end up not being able to function the next day and canceling your office. And right now we've advocated for healthcare systems to be able to negotiate with our interventional cardiology colleagues to be able to be reimbursed for the time that they're spending on call to be available to provide that important STEMI care.
Let me bring up one last point. We did successfully get a code this year for TAVR, as well as a code for the peripheral vascular ventricular assist devices, the Impella and the Tandem Heart. So starting January 1st this year, interventional cardiologists can now get reimbursement for performing these procedures. And that represents an additional piece of work by the Advocacy Committee. Coming down the line, we are currently working on a code for alcohol septal ablation, and we anticipate getting that paid in the future in the next year or 2.
So Jim, I want to congratulate you and Tony Farah and my other co-chair and the other members of our team there, and Wayne Powell, who've been instrumental in the success we've had over the last year. Any members who want to join, please come to the Advocacy Committee meetings. Let us know who you are, and we appreciate any help you want to give.
The meetings are open, so at any SCAI meeting, you can come to the Advocacy Committee, and we will certainly be happy to have you join us.